this is how you measure a dress. This is a dress of mine, so I'm going to go ahead and label it Gabby dress. I love this dress so much. The only problem is that the bust is getting a little bit tight on me, so I think I'm going to take the measurements of this and see if I can find something similar and adjust the bust or make a new one. So when you're measuring a dress, you'll typically have to bunch up the skirt at the bottom so you can get your bodice measurements, and that's totally fine. It doesn't matter that the entire garment is flat. If it's woven and you have a lot of projection built in, as you can see here, I'm grabbing a ton here for my bust. It's because I have bust darts here as well as waist darts. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of flattening this out a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure around this, and then I'm going to show you the best way to measure the circumference of this, because measuring flat from here to here, because there's so much built in the projection, it's not going to give you an accurate measurement. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to try to get my waist flat and my armhole. And then you can see, as I pull this down, the forward shoulder amount. This looks to me like it is a consistent 1/2 inch, which is nice. Yep, okay, so I'm going to place my ruler at the top, and again I'm going to measure up my high point on both sides here, and I'm going to check my shoulder slope. So this side looks about 7/8, so does this side. So the tricky thing about this is because it has this wide bateau neckline, that means that the shoulder slope measurement is even more important for it to match up with my actual shoulder slope on body. This one is okay, but because it's a stretch woven, it's a little bit more forgiving. If anything, I would probably reduce this slope. My shoulders are pretty square, so I might take this to maybe 5/8 of an inch, just to reduce about 1/4 of an inch in that angle. Okay, then for my neck width, because I don't have any trim or anything, I'm just going to go edge to edge from my high point to my high point. And this is about 11 3/4. Then my front neck drop, the same thing from my high point all the way down, 3 1/4. I can't see my back neck drop, so I'll just save that for later. My cross shoulder, I'm going to measure on my front body from seam to seam. That is just about 15 1/2, which is great because that's exactly what I am. My cross chest, because this is a women's dress, I'm going to measure this around 5 1/2 inches down. This is where it's nice to have a stripe. This is almost at the bottom of this stripe, so I can just follow it all the way across. 12 3/4. If you are taller, you might want to take this measurement lower at 6 inches, or really kind of a rough rule of thumb is to do this about halfway down your armhole. Just make sure to keep it consistent on front and back. Armhole depth from high point shoulder. We saw this on the t-shirt. You do the same thing here. So get your ruler, get it as close as you can to where your armhole depth is, and then you can measure down from your high point. So just pick one side. Because this is ready to wear, it's going to be the same on both sides, unless there's something really messed up about it. Okay, so this is 8 1/2 inches. Sleeve length, I'm going to take this one to the seam actually, and not center back, because as you can see, it's going to be a little bit harder to tell because I don't have much of a garment here, and the sleeve is so short, this little cap sleeve. It's 2 3/4. No bicep, no elbow, but there is a sleeve opening, so what I'm going to do is match up my sleeve on both sides. Again, because this is ready to wear, it's going to be the same on both sides, unless there's something wrong with the garment. And this is about 12 inches. And that's total. Okay, so bust circumference. I'm going to save that until I finish with the waist. Okay, so waist circumference. I'm going to take that at the waist seam. If you don't have a waist seam, I would do that at your narrowest point. So I have 31.5. And then my waist placement from high point shoulder. This is where things get a little bit tricky because I do have all this projection built in. So I'm going to try to pull this as flat as I can. Take my clear ruler. You can see that I'm manipulating the garment quite a bit here, which is fine if you need to do that, but I will take this at center front. It's easier to pull it straight when I'm not going over a dart. So for my seam, 16.25. And that's a nice depth, especially for somebody who has a larger chest. Okay, so the hip circumferences, I'm just gonna skip those. This is a dirndl skirt that has had the shaping added to it by the addition of these box pleats. What a dirndl means is that it's equal at the top and at the bottom. So if I measure just the full sweep measurement, that will also tell me how much fabric they use to create these pleat shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and just do my sweep right now. So start at your side seam, fold it over. Oh, I have some fluff. And then just match your edges and measure along the edge all the way around. If your sweep is really, really big, you might need an additional tape measure, or you can start over. So this guy, I think I'm not going to hit 60 inches, so I should be safe. Okay, so I'm measuring. And let's see, I got to 113 inches for a sweep. That's pretty good. It does have a lot of volume. Sweep. This guy does have pockets. So if you were trying to duplicate this, you would take your pocket placement from your waist seam at your side seam. This guy is 3.5 inches. Then you take your pocket opening measurement. I just slide the tape in so I see really where it is at the top. This guy's 5.5 inches. That's a really good pocket opening measurement for women's. Usually you want something between 5.5 inches and 6 inches to really be able to slide your hand in without any problems. All right, so now to go back to my bust circumference. I have a bust dart here and I have a waist dart. So we saw earlier that I have all this jazz here. So I can't get a great measurement just by going flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the garment and I'm going to turn it so I can measure from center back to center front. And when I do this, all of my darts will be laying flat and I'll get a good and accurate measurement from back to front of what my bust circumference is. I will take this probably about 1 inch down from my armhole. That's usually where people fit an apex placement, and I can see here where my dart is. It's usually about 1 inch away from your apex. Same thing with your waist. This one is a little bit higher, so I'm just going to take my bust placement roughly here. So you can see here that this pattern maker was quite clever. They matched the stripe, and that's quite expensive to do, and then they built a bust dart into this stripe and kept the actual stripe and didn't cut into it with the dart. I love seeing things like that. I think it's just so clever and it gives a really nice on-body visual. So for my bust circumference, I'm going to go from center back to center front. You can just pull this out, and I am getting, let's see, this is 37 and a half. 37 and a half for my bust. Where are you? So one thing that I will do is I'll check and see if my front bust is bigger than my back bust. I think this one, it probably is, it looks roughly even, so I'm not actually going to measure that, but on a lot of garments you might see that your front panel is bigger than the back panel. So you could do that same kind of thing where you measure from your side seam here, just to check the difference. So my bust measurement is actually quite a bit bigger than what this circumference is, but again, this is a stretch woven, and again, we know that this garment is tight on me. So then I'm going to turn to the back body. Oh, and isn't this lovely? You can see that the back neck drop is lower than the front. So I'm going to take my ruler, place it at my high point again, and I'm going to check my back neck drop. Right at the center to the edge. And that's 4 3/4. And then I might take my back waist placement just to double check. And this one is only 15 inches. So you can see that the length between the front panel and the back is about 1 1/4 inches different, which is interesting. Center back to waist, 15 inches. Any other optional measurements that I might consider taking are my zipper length at my left side seam. Zippers in dress world are traditionally placed at the left side seam, if not the center back. And the idea is that they should extend at least 8 inches below your waist in order for you to have enough space to put on the garment. I might take my pleat depth here, but again, I don't necessarily have to do that because I have my total sweep measurement and then my waist, so I should mathematically be able to figure out what the depth is here. The other thing I can do is look at my hem heights, my facing heights in here. Isn't this nicely finished? Then you can look at your pocket bag size and shape if you want to duplicate one of those. That's quite lovely too. This is a great dress. All right, cool. So that is how I measure a dress.